Welcome back to Double Doink Dynasty podcast, presented by, once again, myself and Mattoon. What's happening, man?
What's going on, dude?
Nothing. So we had a little bit of argument today after our last podcast about Burnsy getting Justin Jefferson back, not being mentioned in this wild card situation. I don't think he's going to win the division, as him and Andy both have to face off against Lesak and Undy. If we're calling both of them a win, they both get 2 wins. I think it's going to be hard for Burns to cover that spread. But let's focus on that wild card situation real quick. I'm going to run through the 6 teams that could be wild card. Myself, Matt, Burns, Boyer, and Kelly. Jerry, or you could be as well. You could be wild card as well, but you're currently up in your division. And if we give you and Kelly the same type of situation, we're going to let you and Andy slide into playoffs here, and we'll just talk about the other 6. So Burns is currently 5-4. He gets Matt, Jerry, Kelly, Undy, Andy, and Andrew. I would say Jerry is a win. Undy we can call a win. But then he's got Matt, Kelly, Andy. Those 3 are all going to be tough matchups. And then we also have Andrew, which I'm not going to call a guaranteed win. Is it probably going to be a win? Maybe. But with Bijan and Gibbs and all these guys we're going to talk about today, I don't think Andrew is a guaranteed win.
No,
so I got Burns with 2 extra wins right now, and then 4 tough matchups, three playoff type matchups, and then Lesak, which is going to be a consolation matchup.
So let's say he goes 500, or even benefit of the doubt, he wins 3 out of the 4. Let's give him 3 wins. You know what I mean?
So if he wins 3 of those, that means he wins 5 games and loses 2 or loses 1. Is that what you're saying? Because if he does that, I think he can make it. But he has to win 5. If he goes 4-2, which I think is realistic, that puts him at 9 wins.
Yep, 9-6.
All right, so we'll call him give or take 9-6. Andy, I put him on here. So I might have flipped. Maybe I didn't put Andy on here. What am I doing here? Hold on. I didn't put Andy on here. This is probably Matt's.
Andy.
Who plays Nolan this week? Matt does.
So
no, I'm off a week.
No, Andy plays Nolan. So Andy's remaining schedule is Nolan, Paul, myself.
Because we're talking about the division here real quick. I was going mostly playoffs, but here we go.
Lesak, Burns, and Undy.
All right, so we give him a win against Nolan. We give him a win against Paul. We give him a win against Undy.
Underhill.
So he goes 3-3 from here on out. Burns isn't catching Andy.
Correct.
So Andy's going to slide into playoffs if we're given 3 wins for those. I think Nolan's team could or could not put up a fight, but if we're going to go based on what's expectation, I would say Andy beats Nolan. That leaves him with Matt, Lesak, and Burns. And that's still going to put Andy up a game or 2 at the end.
Yep.
So for Burns to win the division is going to be damn near impossible unless Andy just completely falls apart.
Agreed.
Boyer currently at 6-3 has Mattoon, Lesak, Jerry, which is a win, Paul, which should be a win, and then he gets Matt and me. So he's got 4 tough games. If we give him the same benefit of the doubt of winning 2 of the 4 tough games, that puts him at 4-2 and beats out Burns.
Yep.
I have Kelly, Mattoon, Undy is that win, and Paul is the win. If we're giving those away, that leaves me with Kelly, Mattoon, Matt, and Boyer, which are 4 of the tougher games. I don't have Lesak, which is probably the lower end of the tough games, but still a tough game. Yep. So I have a lot of the top end here, which is going to put me in a tough spot. If I win 1 of those, that puts me and Burns in a dead tie. So that's me going 3-3.
Yep.
Matt gets Burns. Nolan is a win. He gets Paul, which is a win. So now one of me or Matt has to win a game, right? So that's guaranteeing one of us a win there. And then he has to beat Burns, Lesack, and Boyer. So he has to win one of those games. And that puts him over Burns.
Over Burns.
So because me and Matt have to play, because me and Boyer have to play, if we all split, we all beat Paul. That's 2 games in our division. I get the win over Undy. He gets the win over Nolan. And Boyer's getting a win over Jerfry. That's going to put that as most likely 2 of the 3 of us stay a game ahead of Burns, unless Burns can win 5 games.
Yep.
So Burns at this point in wild card is in a tough spot being down even just 1 game because there are so many of us and our division has to win.
Someone's got to
win. Right. We have to win games. All right. So our last one, Kelly, he gets me and then he gets Underhill, which is a win. Burns, Jerfry, which is a win. And if we're giving Nolan away as a win, that's 3 of them. So he's already up. He's got me, Mattoon, and Burns. And so if Burns can beat Kelly, which he has, if Burns can beat Matt this week, which he has, then maybe that makes a difference. Burns has Matt and Kelly, which if he can win both of those, will put him in possibly in that driver's seat for playoffs.
Yep.
I'm not saying Burns is out. I'm saying because he is a game behind 4 of us right now, it's going to be hard because if you're calling out divisions, all of my division gets to beat Paul. Sorry, Paul, I appreciate you though. All of the bottom division gets to beat Jerfry. Thank you, Jerfry, for giving them a win, right? And then if we're calling Nolan a win, which I don't think it's a guaranteed win, he'll sneak out a win here or there. But if you say Kelly and Mattoon are both going to beat that, that's 2 wins. Yeah, Burns gets the 2 wins against Lesack and Undy, but I'm not calling Lesack a guarantee.
No.
So I think it's going to be tough for Burns to sneak in. Getting Jefferson back is helpful, but Jefferson's not going to be back this week for week 10. He might be back for week 11. And then if I'm not wrong, he is on a bye week, week 12. He has Chicago week 12. He has a bye week, week 13. So you've also got to consider that. And luckily Burns gets Undy week 13. So he doesn't need Jefferson back that week.
Correct.
But it's going to be tough. So you're not out of it by any means. So
yeah, I think Burns, you've got an uphill battle. You've got the team to do it. We've seen teams in this league go on crazy runs. I just think right now you're hoping for 5-1 to make up that game on these last 6 games, or 4-2 with some help. I think it's 4-2 with some help, 5-1, and you got a good shot.
Yeah, 4-2, I don't think will do it. 5-1 will give you the opportunity.
Yep.
So, all right, with that, let's jump into this bad division, or AKA the middle division, since that's where we're at. We're going to kick off with Andy's team. Andy's team runs with Burrow, Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Alexander Madison, Joe Mixon. So 9 times out of 10, you're playing Joe Mixon, Madison, and Javonte. You're probably not starting Chuba and Miles Sanders at this point for the sake of their splitting work, and trying to figure out what's working there. Other than that, Devin Singletary, he's got Raheem Mostert as well. So definitely a play. So he's got plenty of running back options. He has Tyreek Hill, and Devontae Adams and Tyler Lockett and Tyler Boyd to go along with KJ Osborne and Kadarius Toney. He has Mike Williams on his IR. So that was a rough blow to start the year. So his starting wide receivers are Lockett, Hill, and Adams most weeks, which isn't great. He's got tight end TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts. And he's got Undy's first this year, which should be a fairly early first. He's got 3/3, 4th, 5th. And then most of the picks over the next couple of years, he's got 226 first. He's got yours and his. So he's in a good spot pick-wise. He's got at least 4 firsts coming up. He's got Undy's, which is early, so he can help solidify this ugly wide receiver room. Um, with that, I know Andy's been in the market to sell a running back. He put it out there. And that's clearly the option he needs. He might be one that should go talk to Paul about solidifying a wide receiver here. Undy sold off most of his wide receivers. We'll talk about that. Andrew has some wide receivers that may be available as well. He'd be a guy that I'd be willing to go talk to if I were Andy right here. But the goal is you've got running backs, you've got Burrow, you've got Hockenson. I think solidifying that wide receiver 3 spot and praying that Lockett and or Adams can be your solid wide receiver 2 behind Tyreek is going to be key. Burrow's already passed his bye, so as long as Burrow stays healthy, you're not worried about a backup tight end, which is Geno Smith right now. So I think my goal for Andy right now is trying to figure a way to get another wide receiver in this room. I don't trust Lockett. I don't trust Adams. Boyd is a wide receiver 3 in Cincinnati. Unless Jamar Chase or Higgins stays down, that's going to be a tough situation. So I'm buying a wide receiver for your playoff push. Mattoon, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Andy's put it out there. He's got depth at running back. The biggest thing that I notice with Andy's team is the age. He's got Undy's probably 101, 102, 103 at the worst case scenario. So I imagine Andy's going to draft a young wide receiver this year. So he's going to help himself out next year, but that doesn't help him as he's trying to make decisions for a playoff push right now. And so guys on his team that I think he could try to move, and you mentioned Lesak and you mentioned Paul as guys with wide receivers that are still in that rebuild, still looking to add young pieces. He's got Kyren Williams on IR, should be coming back. Kyren had a really good start to the year, surprised everybody, kicked Cam Akers to Minnesota. I personally am not the biggest Kyren fan, but he's been performing. Maybe a guy like Paul takes a swing on him, moves a Christian Watson for Kyren. He fills one of those running back spots that we were talking about that he desperately needs with only one first this year. And Andy grabs another wide receiver. He's got Mostert. Maybe he tries to move Mostert to Boyer, who has a chain. We talked about Boyer's got some wide receiver depth as well. Guys that have been performing well, like Nico Collins. So I think Andy knows what he's doing. He knows where he needs to go. It's just a matter of doing it. And I think the biggest thing for Andy is not just one move, but maybe trying to make a couple moves to also set my team up for the future and get younger while getting better.
Yep, I'd agree. And like you said, having that Undy pick, he's going to go grab a wide receiver here and solidify that. But it's not helping for right now.
Yep.
But yep. I do have Andy. We kind of talked about it. We do have Andy winning this division. So you don't have to do a lot right now to win your division and get to playoffs. But it's what do you do when you come to playoffs? And I know Andy's kind of big on Devontae Adams end of season here, coaching change, everything else. Like they should be getting the ball. So if that's the case, if you like him there, at least he's a wide receiver 2. But you really don't have a wide receiver 3 now with Osborne hurt, Justin Jefferson coming back, and Tony not being a thing. So find a way to get that, and I think you're good to go. All right, take us over to Burnsy real quick.
All right, so Burns is actually just recently acquired Jalen Hurts, which is what he needed. His quarterbacks have been very questionable, and he's had a rough go. He had Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers to start the year. He's picked up a handful of guys. Josh Dobbs he's got, but he made that trade for Hurts. So he's definitely got his solidified quarterback, not only this year, but for the next probably several years as well. So nice move, Burns. I know you were hurting there and you made a nice decision. His running backs, Breece Hall, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery. He's got AJ Dillon. I don't think he's got really anybody else that I would start there at the running back position, but Tony Pollard certainly has, a lot of talent. He's maybe not had the year that everybody was expecting him to have. Breece Hall had a rough start, coming off of IR. But And Dave Montgomery, I think, has surprised everybody. You expected maybe a little bit more of a share of the backfield in Detroit, and Montgomery came out the gates. I think one game he had 40 carries, so he's killing it. Nice hold there, Burns. Not panic selling when the Lions drafted Gibbs. So good running backs. His wide receivers, he is absolutely loaded, and he was loaded until Jefferson went down. He's got Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, 3 absolute studs. Don't change anything there. You've done everything right. He's got a little bit of depth. He went and traded for Ridley. He's got Michael Thomas. Alan Lazard hasn't really been a factor this year. And then his tight ends, he's got Cole Kmet and Jake Ferguson.
Dalton Schultz has been great this year too.
Dalton Schultz as well. Yep. And so Burns' team is fairly young. And so I think he's built himself a pretty long window. He does not have hardly any picks. He has got 4th and 5th rounders the next 2 years. And then he's got a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in 26. So Burns, I love what you did. You built your team to last for the next several years until you start recouping picks in 26, 27 moving forward. So the only thing I can maybe see you doing is your running back play has been very up and down. You went and got some wide receiver depth. Talked about Andy needing an extra wide receiver. I'm not saying that Ridley or Michael Thomas is, a clear-cut stud, but maybe they're a guy that you can, make a swap with for an Alexander Madison with Andy. Now, again, I'm not saying Madison's the guy either, but just try to grab another running back and find a good trading partner.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not making a lot of moves. I just think if there's a way to, if this week goes downhill for you, if you find yourself in consolation by week 12, luckily here's where that late trade deadline kind of comes in. Tony Pollard, David Montgomery would both be movable pieces for me at this point, depending upon what you can get. If you can go out there and get a couple young guys for somebody that wants to make a run, I think it would be worthwhile. Even if you could move David Montgomery for a couple seconds at the trade deadline, I think I'd be willing to do that for 2 seconds. And then somebody you could take a shot on a couple running backs there. You could take a shot on somebody. You can try to use those plus a player to move up. But because your pick situation is rough until 2026, when you have a 1st and 2nd, you're either doing that or you're legit just standing pat with what you've got, which I think is also fine. Hurts.
I'm okay with it.
Hurts, Jefferson, Lamb, Chase, Breece Hall. They'll get you another 2 years out of all of them, pending any major injuries. And that'll be a great core to your team. It is just whether or not you want to grab some picks and you want to move off of a Pollard or Montgomery. I think Pollard probably finds himself in more of a timeshare next year. I think Dallas has realized that maybe he's not as good as he could be if he was still in that timeshare, doing more of the passing game work, getting him outside. They're trying to put him up the middle, and that's just not what he is. So I think that's that. And I think, honestly, if Montgomery isn't good next couple weeks and you're in it, you're holding him. If you're not in it, if you can get a couple seconds for it, I'd be okay moving it. Aaron Jones went for a 2nd and 3rd, and Montgomery's been better than that this year.
Great.
So I would say if you can get 2 seconds, I'd be willing to move Montgomery if you find yourself on the outside looking. So, yeah. But other than that, I think your team is standing pretty pat where it's at.
Yep. I don't think Burns needs to rebuild. I don't think he needs to sell. I think if anything, he rides these next 2 weeks. He sees what shakes, and maybe he retools slightly. You don't need to do anything crazy. You've done a great job, man.
Yep. All right, so we'll jump to Andrew. Andrew is still in the middle of this rebuild. He's got 3 firsts and 3 seconds this year. He's got his own and Nolan's and Matt's. So probably in that 4 to 8 range, probably all of them, unless Matt makes the playoffs. And then you got 2 in that 4 to 8 range and then 1 in that back end. But that still gives you plenty of options to help you cover. So to his team, he's got Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, and Gardner Minshew. I don't think you got to worry about quarterback yet. You could go and draft one this year late if you want. It is a decent quarterback class, so depending upon where they go, with that Matt pick, you could possibly go and pick up a quarterback with your third first round pick. So I think with that, you're dropping Minshew, and you're possibly throwing another one in there. But I'm cool riding Trevor Lawrence.
He's
And I
got
think Jared,
Levis on his taxi as well, which hasn't been bad the last 2 weeks.
yeah, I just don't know that Levis is going to be a long-term answer either. So we'll see. But this last year he drafted Bijan, he drafted Gibbs. Outside of that, he picked up DeMarcado. He's got Rico Dowdle, Michael Carter. He's got Ronnie Rivers. I mean, there's nothing there, and he knows it. He went with the wide receiver options, and then this last year went full on Bijan and Gibbs. So he's definitely missing that running back 3, which I think he needs to find. So my guess is he drafts one this year. If you could go out and grab a more solidified guy with one of these picks, I wouldn't be opposed to that, because I think that would speed up your redraft or your rebuild a little bit quicker to have that running back 3. You've got Downs, you got Jacoby Myers, you got Zay Flowers, Demario Douglas, Devonta Smith, Rondale Moore, J-Mo, Tyquan Thornton. You got Zay Jones on your on your IR, Jalen Hyatt on your taxi. I do like Downs. I like Flowers. I like Devonta Smith. I think those are your 3 main guys you're building around. Jacoby Myers has been good this year. I don't know what he's going to be moving forward. But with those 3 first, you're going to grab at least a wide receiver and at least a running back would be my guess with you and Nolan's picks. And then with that Matt pick, I'm not 100% sure yet. It could be a quarterback, could be another running back shot. But I like what you've done so far. Higbee at tight end and Jonnu Smith has been doing okay. You got Luke Schoonmaker, which was supposed to come in and fight with Ferguson for that top tight end spot. He got injured. It's not been good. Ferguson's probably going to hold that job. Schoonmaker's probably going to be out. So that's another positional need you have. With some of these seconds, I would not be opposed to going and trying to buy a tight end from a team that has a lot of them. If you like a shot on some tight end on a guy like Tyler's team, he's got a lot of them. They're all injured though. No, but in all seriousness, I think if you could go grab a more solidified tight end with these second rounders, I would be about that. Because you're going to need that. And you have 3 first rounders. And like we kind of talked about on the last episode, is that you can't hold all these guys on your taxi. You've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 first round picks this year. And yeah, you got people to drop.
9 picks, not 9 first, 9 picks.
9 picks. Did I say first? You got 9 picks. And so with that, you're not going to be able to hold them all on your taxi. So if you could move a couple seconds to go get a tight end, that is a more solidified, he's going to be a starter. Brock Bowers is there, so maybe you grab him at the start of that draft. But I don't, we've seen rookie tight ends go off this year a little bit. So, but that's the only one that I'm really overly excited about for next year. So I think you're just going to keep riding this rebuild. If you can go spend a couple seconds to get a tight end, I'd be about it. If you could spend a couple seconds to get or even that background first, if you like a guy that's more solidified at RB3, I would be okay moving Matt's first closer to the trade deadline, knowing where Matt's at. But I'm not looking to go crazy with this team, either moving guys or going and buying. But I think because of your picks, I think a couple seconds, if you could get an RB3, would be a beneficial move.
Yeah. So Lisak tore this thing down kind of mid-season last year. Looking back, he had Jonathan Taylor, he had Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs. So he had a lot of really solid pieces, and he just tore it down. Season didn't start the way he wanted, so I commend him for that. But he's been doing things, in my opinion, the way Paul should be doing it. is he's gone and he moved 2 seconds to grab Josh Downs a week or two ago. You know, a young wide receiver with some upside, nice flip. Last year, I think he had a later first, and he flipped that for Devonta Smith. So he went and got guys that had roles or have shown promise, while still having other picks to use for solidified, you know, spots that he needed on his roster. So
he did trade for Zay Flowers right after the draft, or in September as well.
Yep, right.
He got rid of Tutu Atwell and a first to go get Zay Flowers. I mean, that turns out to look really nice as well.
Yeah, so I like the way that he's been doing it. He's not just throwing his picks around, but he is being very strategic with, I do have a lot of picks, and I've seen guys now play some games. I'm going to go get something that I've actually seen versus the prospect of a player that's getting drafted. So I think you've been doing a good job, man. Keep doing it, slow and steady, and you put yourself in a good spot, 4-5. I don't think anybody maybe expected that right when the season began.
I don't think you expected it. I think you expected a better pick. But you know what? You're going in the right direction, and you're definitely going to be competitive next year. So,
all right, our favorite team.
Yep, shoot it.
Yeah, so Underhill. Underhill, he's got, man, Brock Purdy, Bryce Young. He's got
Mac Jones.
Spears. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that one. And he's got Deuce Vaughn. Is that fair for his running back room?
Yeah, probably. I mean, he's got Tank Bigsby, which could be a thing, but you need an injury.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, Darrell Henderson's not a thing. Jamal Williams isn't a thing. Dalvin Cook's not a thing.
Yeah, for a team that's in a rebuild, just looking at what's going to be there in the future, and outside of those 3 or 4 guys that we named at the beginning, I don't think there's necessarily a whole lot that you feel great about. Wide receivers, he just recently traded for Tank Dell, who's shown, I mean, he had a great week this past week. He had a couple good weeks to start the season. We'll see what shakes there. DPJ, Rashid Shaheed, Tutu Atwell. Yeah.
Right. He traded Mike Evans this year to me for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, he got rid of Ridley. He got rid of Evans. He got rid of Mingo.
Yeah. So he's got to be drafting wide receivers, but he doesn't even have first this year. So he's got 3 seconds.
Yep. And then tight ends. Trey McBride is coming along with Ertz being out. He's been doing well. He's got Isaiah Likely and Chig Okonkwo. Both of those guys showed promise last year. Andrews was out. Likely was killing it for a couple weeks. So you got some prospects in the tight end room. Looking at his pick situation, it's not great. He's got 3 seconds this year, a third. Now he's got 3 firsts and 2 seconds in 25. So maybe he can move some of those 25s into a 24. We'll see what it shakes.
And the hard part is he's sitting on mine, yours, and Burns. He's 25 firsts. And we kind of talked about all of we haven't talked about your team yet, but we talked about my team being young and then the upswing, Burnsy's team having a great young core. So both of those are going to be late. We'll talk more about your pick next week or on our next one, but that's probably going to be mid to late at best.
Yep.
So
Undy, I think you know it. I think he's been very transparent of he doesn't own his own first. So going full tank mode hasn't necessarily been his plan this season. He's been grabbing guys like Darrell Henderson and, you know, plugging them in. I just think right now he's got to start taking swings on young guys. I mentioned it with Paul. Instead of grabbing all these older guys off of the waiver wire, scour that rookie list that's out there for free agents and just start adding those guys. Any of them that have a team that are maybe getting a 25 to 30% snap share a week, just grab them, put them on your roster and see what shakes.
Yeah. I would say at this point, if you can move Kareem Hunt for something, I'm moving him. Which I think somebody would give you something for Hunt. You got Jerome Ford is back, but I think it's still going to be a semi-split backfield with Hunt and Ford. I think Ford will take probably 70%. Hunt gets about a 30% workload. And but if Hunt can still get 8 touches a game, he can do something with it. So
Yep.
I think that's a piece you could be moving.
And we've seen it in the past when Chubb was there. Hunt's the guy that's always vulturing touchdowns in the red zone. He proved that last week. I think Jerome Ford had 20 some touches, and Hunt was the guy that they put in on the 3-yard line.
I love that. I know I made the trade with you, but I love you getting Brock Purdy, knowing that you moved Hurts, knowing that you moved Mahomes. Like, you got a young quarterback that's got a good location, that's got a good possibility of being something. I'm not sold that you moved Hurts and Mahomes. But getting Purdy for Evans wasn't necessarily a bad move on your end. I liked it. You got Purdy in a second for Evans in a fourth. So you did get a pick. You got a young quarterback, which I like. I like the move, the mental move of it. Getting Mostert was kind of mind blowing. I'm glad you got rid of him again. Taysom Hill, along with Kareem Hunt, would be the other guy I'm looking to get rid of. Taysom Hill has had 12, 21, and 16 points. Not only it doesn't matter to you, but normally he's hurting your max points for, which it really doesn't matter to you right now because you don't have that pick. But if you could get a couple picks, a second, a third, even just an early second out of Taysom Hill at this point, somebody that's competing says, "Yo, I could use this as a tight end." I would make that move. I would be getting rid of Taysom Hill. I would be getting rid of Kareem Hunt. Outside of that, there's not a lot on your team that's going to be people are going to be buying. Those are the only 2 pieces that I see being a thing. If something happened to Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook takes over, maybe. If that's the case, I'd be moving him at that point as well. But Michael Carter and Izzy and other people are there, so I'm not even sure Dalvin's going to be the go-to guy.
I was going to say, one thing I'm thinking is similar to what we've told Paul, what we've told Lisak. And he's got his own second, so that's a potentially 201, 202. So I think you're going to draft a guy there, right? But for those other 2 seconds and thirds that you've got this year, package a second and third and go grab another young wide receiver like what we just saw Lisak do with Josh Downs. Pair some of those picks, go take some shots on some young guys, man.
Yeah. If you can get a guy that's playing 60, 70% of their snaps and not being overly productive, if you could move 2 late seconds for him, I'd take a shot on it.
I mean, here's the scenario, and I'm just throwing this out there. Lisak has bought a couple wide receivers. He's got Jamison Williams, who hasn't necessarily panned out yet. I'm not going to call him a bust. I think there's certainly a lot of athleticism and talent there. Zandy throw a second and third at Lisak for a guy that hasn't done much. I'm not saying that that's the value. I don't know what the value is. I'm just thinking hypothetically, you've got teams that Paul, who's got wide receivers that haven't done anything. You've got Tank Dell, but then behind that, there's not a whole lot of young wide receivers. You got a lot of holes to fill. So start moving those picks, man, taking shots.
Yep. As long as you're making the move to get a young guy that's been playing, don't make that move to get an older guy that's not going to be worthwhile after this year. You've got a couple-year rebuild that we got to deal with. So, all right, with that, real quick rundown of the division. Andy wins. Then you end up with Burns pushing wild card. And then Lisak consolation, Undy at the bottom, correct?
Yep, that's exactly how it is.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're pretty good on the middle division. And then we will come back with you guys with the bottom division pretty soon.
All right, guys, we'll see you.
All right, we're out.